What if I told you there was a truck designed to be driven while standing up, or a massive Soviet machine that physically detaches its cab to turn? Welcome to the absolute freak show of automotive history. We aren't talking about rejected sketches or rusty pickups. We are revealing 10 real mechanical monstrosities that defied logic, physics, and safety. From wobbly three-wheeled death traps to armored tank carriers, these vehicles are so bizarre, you will genuinely question how they were ever legal to drive on public roads. Do not look away, because number one on this list is a total mind-bender. Smash that subscribe button, hit the bell icon right now, and let's dive straight into the madness. We are starting strong with a mind-bending concept from the Soviet Union that could have changed trucking forever: the MAZ 2000 Perestroika. Debuting at the 1988 Paris Motor Show, this was not just a truck, it was a fully modular system. The engineers at the Minsk automobile plant decided to completely separate the cab from the chassis. The entire powertrain, engine, gearbox, and steering was contained in a separate traction module underneath the cabin. This meant the cab did not tilt. Instead, the entire front unit rotated relative to the cargo box. It was an engineering marvel that eliminated the gap between the cab and the trailer, creating incredible aerodynamics that were years ahead of their time. Technically, the MAZ 2000 was a beast of efficiency designed to maximize every inch of road space. By using this unique modular design, they increased the cargo volume by nearly 350 cubic feet compared to standard trucks of that era. It featured a completely flat floor in the cabin, something we take for granted now but was revolutionary back then. The steering system was hydraulic, and the wheels on the trailer were steered as well, meaning this long combination vehicle had the tight turning radius of a passenger car. Powered by a manned diesel engine, the Perestroika name symbolized the restructuring of the Soviet Union, and the design truly represented a break from traditional constraints. Sadly, the MAZ 2000 is a massive what-if story in automotive history. Despite blowing everyone away in Paris and proving its worth in real-world test runs, the geopolitical collapse of the Soviet Union killed the project. The funding completely dried up, and the modular dream fell apart before it could reach mass production. The patents for this articulated design were reportedly sold to Western companies, influencing future designs, but the MAZ 2000 itself never hit the highway in numbers. Today, only a couple of prototypes exist, standing as a testament to a moment when Soviet engineering tried to leapfrog the rest of the world with a truck that physically separated the driver from the drive wheels. Next up, we have something much smaller but equally bizarre from Germany. Meet the Volkswagen Type 147, better known as the Fridolin. If you think this looks like a Volkswagen Beetle that got stuck inside a shoebox, you are not far off. In the early 1960s, the German Postal Service needed a very specific vehicle. They wanted something cheap, with huge sliding doors for easy access and enough space to haul mail, but the existing VW transporter was too big and the Beetle was too small. So Volkswagen raided their parts bin and Frankensteined this little yellow oddity into existence. It is arguably one of the cutest yet weirdest proportions ever seen on a delivery van. The engineering behind the Fridolin is a masterclass in recycling parts to solve a problem. It sits on the chassis of a VW Karmann Ghia because it was wider than the Beetle, providing better stability. The engine is the standard air-cooled flat-four from the Beetle, located in the rear, which meant the cargo floor had to be raised to clear the motor. But the most distinct features were those sliding doors. They were heavy, clunky, and absolutely essential for mail carriers jumping in and out hundreds of times a day. The bodywork was sharp and angular, a complete departure from the curves of the Beetle, giving it the aerodynamics of a brick and a top speed of just around 60 miles per hour. Despite its awkward looks, the Fridolin became a cult classic in Europe. Between 1964 and 1974, over 6,000 were built, mostly for the German and Swiss postal services. Because they were government workhorses, most were driven into the ground and scrapped, making them incredibly rare today. Seeing one on the streets of the US is almost impossible, but when you do, it draws a bigger crowd than a Ferrari. It is a reminder of a time when manufacturers would build a completely unique car just to solve a very specific problem for a government contract. It's ugly, cute perfection that collectors now pay serious money to own. Crossing the channel to Great Britain, we find the Morris J-Type, a van that looks like it drove straight out of a vintage cartoon. Produced from 1948 to 1961, this van is affectionately known as the Pear Drop due to its bulbous sweeping design. In the post-war era, Britain needed to get its economy moving again, and the J-Type was the answer for local bakers, florists, and milkmen. Look closely at the front. The grille is huge and vertical, the headlights sit on the fenders like frog eyes, and the windshield is split. It has a charm that modern vans simply can't match, but driving it was a different story entirely. The layout of the Morris J-Type is primitive by today's standards and quite punishing for the driver. It used a small 1.5-liter side-valve engine derived from the Morris Oxford car. The engine was located inside the cabin, sitting right between the driver and the passenger. In the summer, this meant the cabin became a sauna, cooking the driver as they worked. Even weirder, it had sliding front doors, a common theme for delivery trucks, but these doors slid externally along the body. This was great for tight London streets, allowing drivers to keep the doors open for ventilation, which was necessary given the engine heat. The driver sat directly over the front wheels in a forward control layout, which gave great visibility but zero protection in a crash. The 3-speed gearbox was notorious for being tricky, requiring a skilled hand to navigate without grinding gears loud enough to wake the neighborhood. Today, the Morris J-Type is an absolute icon of British culture. A fully restored J-Type in original livery, like the famous Royal Mail Red, can fetch serious money at auctions. It represents the optimism of the 1950s, wrapped in a curvy steel shell that prioritized style and utility over driver comfort. It is quirky, slow, and undeniably one of the most recognizable silhouettes in history. Now let's look at Germany's strange attempt to turn three-wheelers into four-wheelers, the Tempo Wiking. Produced from 1953 to 1955, this vehicle looks more like a beached boat than a commercial truck. Tempo was famous across Europe for their wobbly handseat three-wheelers, and the Waking was their desperate attempt to create stability and safety with a four-wheel design. However, even with the added wheel, they kept the insane heart of the old line, a tiny, noisy 450 Zamacy two-stroke engine borrowed from Heinkel aircraft technology, creating a combination like no other. The weirdness of the Tempo Wiking lies in the contradictory mix of chassis design and drivetrain. It was front-wheel drive, FWD, with the entire engine and gearbox packed into a low, stubby nose, creating a very distinctive and comical fish-mouth look. When running, the two-stroke engine screamed like an angry chainsaw, puffing out clouds of blue smoke typical of oil-mixed gasoline. Even though having four wheels helped it tip over less, it still offered a raw, vibrating driving experience, making the driver feel like they were piloting an oversized tin toy rather than a serious cargo truck. Although the Tempo Wiking was safer than its infamous three-wheeled predecessor, it was still a marvel of post-war minimalism. It lacked basic amenities, even a fuel gauge. You had to stop and use a dipstick to check if you had gas. The top speed was only about 45 miles per hour going downhill, making driving it on a modern highway today a truly suicidal act. The Wiking is a fascinating link between dangerous three-wheelers and modern trucks, a testament to an era when simply having four wheels was considered a high-end luxury feature. If the Tempo wasn't enough, we have its arch-rival, the Goliath GD750. The name Goliath is deeply ironic for such a small, three-wheeled machine. Produced by the Borgward Group in the late 40s and early 50s, this was another desperate solution for post-war transport. Like the Tempo, it featured a single front wheel and a truck bed in the back. However, the Goliath was marketed as a more robust, heavy-duty option. The design is utilitarian to the extreme: a flat, vertical front end, a simple canvas roof, and a steering wheel that looked like it was stolen from a tractor. Under the hood, or rather under the seat, The Goliath GD750 typically ran on a small two-stroke engine, producing barely enough horsepower to climb a hill. The driving experience was visceral. The vibration from the engine would rattle your teeth, and the lack of sound insulation meant you heard every explosion in the cylinders. What makes the Goliath interesting is that it was surprisingly capable, with a payload capacity of nearly 1,650 pounds. That is practically its own weight. It was a true workhorse that helped rebuild German cities from the rubble, carrying bricks and mortar where larger trucks couldn't fit. Eventually, the economic miracle of the 1950s meant people could afford four wheels. The Goliath GD750 became obsolete as safety regulations tightened and drivers demanded vehicles that didn't threaten to flip over at every roundabout. Goliath eventually moved to four-wheeled cars, but the GD750 remains a symbol of resilience. Collectors now love them for their quirkiness. Watching one of these chug along at a car show is a delight. It puffs blue smoke, makes a distinct ring-ding-ding sound, and looks like a mechanical insect. It is a piece of history you have to respect, even if you wouldn't want to drive it on a highway. We are heading back to the USA for an absolute legend, the Divco Twin. If you grew up in America between the 1940s and the 1970s, this is the milk truck. The shape is unmistakable: a rounded snub-nosed front, a split windshield, and an Art Deco grille that gives it a friendly face. But the weirdness of the Divco isn't just in its looks, it's in how you drove it. These trucks were designed for multi-stop delivery routes, meaning the driver had to get in and out hundreds of times a day. To make this easier, Divco engineered a system where you could drive the truck while standing up. Yes, you heard that right. The Divco featured a dual control system. You could sit and drive like a normal person for long distances, or you could stand on the low floor and operate the vehicle. The throttle and brake were often duplicated or mounted on the gearshift column, a twist-grip throttle, so the milkman could roll between houses without constantly sitting down. The chassis was incredibly heavy-duty, allowing these trucks to carry thousands of pounds of glass milk bottles and ice. They were powered by reliable engines like the Continental Inline 4 or 6, geared extremely low because they rarely exceeded 40 miles per hour on their routes. The longevity of the Divco is insane. The basic design barely changed for decades because it was perfect for its job. You will see these in old movies, and many have been converted into hot rods or promotional vehicles today. But stock examples are mechanical marvels of specific use engineering. The twin in the name referred to the twin pedal arrangement in earlier models, or the twin coach construction style. It is a vehicle that prioritized the worker's efficiency above all else. It's quirky, nostalgic, and arguably the most recognizable delivery truck in American history, representing a bygone era of door-to-door service. Let's look at the DKW Schnelllaster, also known as the Rapid Transporter. Launched in 1949, this van looks like it is melting. The front end slopes down dramatically, creating a continuous aerodynamic line from the roof to the bumper. But the Schnelllaster is on this list because it was quietly revolutionary. While everyone else was building rear-wheel drive trucks, DKW decided to put the engine in the front and drive the front wheels. It was one of the first reliable front-wheel drive vans, a layout that is now standard for almost all modern delivery vans like the Ram ProMaster. By putting the engine and drive wheels at the front, DKW created a completely flat cargo floor in the back. There was no driveshaft tunnel running through the middle, meaning you could load cargo much lower to the ground, just 15 inches high. The engine was a pre-war design, a two-cylinder, two-stroke motor that was simple but loud. The Schnelllaster name was a bit of optimistic marketing, as it wasn't particularly fast, struggling to reach highway speeds. However, the layout allowed for incredibly flexible body styles: pickups, vans, campers, and even luxury buses. The Schnelllaster is a favorite among audiophiles of classic cars because of that distinct two-stroke buzz. It's also rare. Many were worked to death in Europe, and few made it to the US. Those that did are now highly prized collector's items. The styling is unapologetically aerodynamic for the 1940s, looking like a bullet train carriage, it proves that you don't need a massive V8 to be interesting. The DKW Schnellasters set the blueprint for the modern minivan and cargo van decades before the term minivan was even invented, making it a true pioneer. Now let's leave the small vans behind and look at a monster. This is the Pacific M26, nicknamed the Dragon Wagon. This wasn't designed to deliver milk. It was designed to carry 40-ton tanks across the battlefields of World War II. It is arguably one of the most aggressive-looking trucks ever built. The cab is armored with heavy steel plating and slotted windows that make it look like a rolling bunker. It sits high off the ground, powered by a massive 190 cubic-inch Hall-Scott 440 gasoline engine. Yes, over 1,000 cubic inches for a gasoline engine, pure American excess. The Dragon Wagon used a chain drive system to the rear wheels, which was old school even for the 1940s, but it was incredibly tough and easier to repair in the field. It was a 6x6 vehicle, meaning all 6 wheels were driven. The rear 4 wheels were driven by those massive exposed chains. Inside the armored cab, it was loud, hot, and cramped for the crew of 7. It had huge winches on the back to drag damaged tanks onto its trailer. The sheer presence of this truck is terrifying. It looks like something out of a Mad Max movie, but it was real, and it saved countless assets during the war. After the war, many Dragon Wagons were sold as surplus and used in heavy logging or mining, where their immense power was needed. But they were thirsty beasts, drinking fuel at a rate of gallons per mile, not miles per gallon. Today, seeing a restored M26 is a religious experience for truck lovers. The sound of that massive Hall-Scott engine roaring to life, the clanking of the drive chains, and the armored silhouette make it the ultimate tough guy truck. It's a machine built for one purpose: brute force, and it executes that purpose perfectly. We are heading back to the UK for a truck that was designed around the driver's eyes, the Morris FG. Produced from 1960 to 1980, this truck was everywhere in Britain, but it looked incredibly odd. It was nicknamed the Threepenny Bit cab. Why? Because the cabin was angled. Instead of a square box, the rear corners of the cab were cut off diagonally, and the doors were mounted on these angled sections. This gave the cab the shape of a threepenny coin. But this wasn't just for style, it was a brilliant safety feature designed for the narrow streets of the UK. The angled doors were suicide doors, hinged at the rear, but because of the angle, when you opened them, they didn't swing out into traffic. They stayed within the width of the truck's body. This was perfect for narrow streets and prevented drivers from getting their doors taken off by passing cars. Furthermore, the Morris FG had curb view windows, extra windows located low down near the driver's feet in the front corners. This allowed the driver to see exactly where the curb was, making parking this commercial truck incredibly easy and preventing damage to the wheels. Despite these clever features, the Morris FG was a bit of a torture chamber to drive. The engine was essentially in the cabin with you, under a thin metal cover, so it was noisy and hot. The gear stick was awkwardly placed and the suspension was stiff. But it was a workhorse. It served as a bread van, a tow truck, and a general utility vehicle for decades. Its threepenny bit shape is a prime example of form following function. It looks weird to us now, but every angle on that truck was calculated to help the driver navigate the tight, congested streets of 1960s England. Finally, we end with the grandfather of American heavy trucking, the Mack AC. This truck is the reason Mack has a Bulldog as its mascot. Built from 1916 to 1938, the AC is instantly recognizable by its snub nose. Unlike modern trucks with a big grille in front, the Mack AC had its radiator mounted behind the engine right in front of the driver's windshield. This gave the front end a sloping, tapered look, protecting the radiator from damage during WWII battlefields and construction sites. It was a design born from the necessity of war and hard labor. The Mack AC was chain-driven, a feature Mack stuck with long after others switched to drive shafts simply because it was durable. During World War I, British soldiers testing the truck were amazed by its tenacity in the mud. They said it had the appearance and the attitude of a British Bulldog, tough, short-nosed, and impossible to stop. The name stuck, and Mack adopted the Bulldog as their official logo. The hood was made of sheet metal that flared out to the sides, giving it broad shoulders. It looked muscular and ready to fight, embodying the spirit of early American industry. Driving a Mack AC was a workout. It had no power steering, mechanical brakes that required a heavy foot, and a transmission that required double clutching perfection. But it built America. It built the dams, the roads, and the skyscrapers of the Roaring '20s. When you look at a Mack AC, you aren't just looking at a weird old truck. You are looking at the machine that defined the reputation of American trucking for a century. It is the ultimate classic, a mechanical legend that proved ugly can be beautiful if it gets the job done right. From the modular Soviet giants to the tiny German three-wheelers, these trucks show that automotive history is full of surprises. They might be weird, but they paved the way for the vehicles we drive today. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this ride, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more amazing car stories. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.